I think the biggest achievement was the thing that is the most novel about LCFF nationwide, and that's the concept of concentration grants. And the view that we had when we began to think about this back in 2007, that extreme poverty leads to challenges of education that have to be adjusted for with major amounts of money, and that concentrations of poverty cause problems that have not been dealt with even the tweaking that other states have done with putting a little bit of money into it.
I think you'll find a lot of people will agree, but then they will say that the use of free and reduced lunch was the wrong measure of that, and that it hasn't quite reached the intense schools or areas of poverty that you had hoped. Do you agree or disagree with that?
I agree with that, and I've been calling for a consideration of new measures of poverty, particularly using census and unemployment data. Oregon's thinking about this, and there is a bit of a focus of researchers that are looking into this now in California. Yes, it has. I mean, I thought there would be more recategorization, and that the legislature would come back with more specific things. Bills are legislators' footnotes in history, and they like to pass bills, and so it's held much more than I thought. I think again, I would credit the governors for being tough on this, and both of them in this era.
So, one of the questions, when I say that, I also mean, did local control work as envisioned? Are you convinced, looking back, that local school boards have the wisdom to enact good decisions, that parents would be engaged and are engaged to help create the results of local control? Has it rolled out in the way that you had hoped it would?
No, not completely, but and I'll be specific, but our whole idea was patience and continuous improvement. And this year's legislative session was another session of continuous improvement. But I've been particularly disappointed in the school boards. I thought that they should be really involved in this with the LCAP. This was their chance to get beyond formulaic budgets and the complexity of budgets, look at a 3-year plan, set clear budget priorities. And generally, my impression is that they have not. They haven't gotten a lot of help in doing that. So I think that's important. Parents, we've been working with that with several changes to the bill, put money in for it. That's a hard push to get parents really influential and knowledgeable about budgets. And the LCAP as an instrument needs even more work to do that. So we're moving towards that, but 10 years down the line, we've made some progress, but not enough. I think it should be, yes. I think we should look at that, but look at it in some sophisticated way, meaning that this country tried, and I lived through it in the 80s and 70s, to require local school districts, and Los Angeles was doing this, require local school districts to balance their teachers by forcibly moving the teachers from school to school, to make the taking teachers in wealthy areas and putting them in the low income areas. And it didn't work. The teachers didn't want to be there. They weren't particularly effective in those settings, which they didn't want to be in. Of course, they objected, and their unions objected, and I have some sympathy for that. So I think the only way we should look at it, and the way that we can deal with it, is not forcible teacher transfer, but adding more teaching resources to those particular schools. And so there's a way of fitting that into LCFF.
You mean by that, you mean making it more attractive two teachers who want to be in those schools because
that or drastic reduction of class size, and my favorite would be release time for the teachers in those settings to have a lot more preparation for how to teach the standards and improve instruction. There's a trade-off between doing the things you need to do, some of which we've talked about, some of which the state board has already and the legislature have already done, and the complexity and the length. I think the way we tried to do it, and I'm still thinking this is worth more trying, is summary of it. And an executive summary would really focus it down, include things that were crucial, and it would be the issue the school boards would deliberate on.